Good day and welcome to COVID-19 Club Member Training. And today I'll be looking at Sport Club Administration, which is the day-to-day running of a sports organization or a sports club. And I want to look at a few things that you and I might be familiar with. And I know that perhaps some of you have done some work on this subject, and perhaps some of you have attended even some courses on this subject. And you are aware that sports administration is very broad. In fact, administration has been known to be the engine of any sports structure. And I'm not sure if you have observed that the difference between well-structured sports clubs or organization and structures that are not so well-structured is the administration of the club or that sports organization. And basically, administration is the engine behind an organization, because successful organizations are very much administrative, meaning they've got proper administration infrastructure. They've got the right people who run around and keep their documents and do their filing, and people will make sure that documents are well developed. And you will see as we talk through the presentation that one of the, I'll say, the weaknesses or things that we lack in the industry are good administrators. And let me say this, that sometimes the fact that you are the founder of a club or that organization does not necessarily mean that you would be the administrator for that organization. You may need to get somebody with very good administration skills, somebody who's able to do things for you as you stay focused to whatever job that you need to do. So this presentation will look at various things that we need to look at, meaning a framework of administration in a sports organization in particular. And we'll look at several topics that we'll cover, which number one topic is why sport administration is important. And like I said, because I've gone through the list of participants on this program, and I came across some prominent names and people that have been around. I'm aware that you've probably attended courses on the same subject and maybe better courses, and perhaps this could be a refresher course for you, something or a message that you may need to take with maybe to your junior administrators to say, guys, to run a successful sports structure, we have to get our house in order. And there are basic or key administrative aspects or skills or elements that you and I need to have if we want to run a successful organization. So we'll be looking at several issues. The first thing we'll be looking at is basically the issues around the appointment of a club or a sports structure or leadership, to say, how do we fill positions? For example, if I'm looking for a club secretary or a treasurer, do I even have an idea of the type of person that I am looking for? I'm sure you have seen it, that one of the things that can kill any industry is the appointment of people based on friendship and other things like this, or based on friendliness. And you are aware that friendships don't really or necessarily build organization. What builds an organization is a skill, meaning that if I bring people to my sports structure, we might not be friends, but the key thing is that are they people who have a certain skill? And there might be volunteers, I agree, as I mentioned previously, that that we have also observed that a lot of people that we work with are volunteers. But you could get somebody who's a volunteer, but the person is very much administrative, meaning the person has got the skill. So somebody who has got the skill, the administrative skills, that person can even be identified as somebody that we can send on this type of training. So these are some of the key elements that we'll be looking at. And we'll look at general leadership, how to appoint all these wonderful people, and look at the various offices that we need to have functional in our clubs for the club to run in a way that it should run. And we'll be looking at also at a common aspect, which is running of club meetings. How do we run? What documents do we need to have in order to run successful meetings? And we'll look at something very important, very key, which is running the club finances. Basically, we are looking at club finances in 3 levels. Level 1 is what documents do we need in order to say we can go and look for funding. Level 2 is how do we put together a funding application or proposal. And level 3, we'll be looking at just basic financial management. Now that we have received the money, for us to get the money again, I'm sure some of you have worked with different funders. One of the things that block us from getting funding is the misuse of funding that is received. So for me to keep getting funding, you know how it goes. You have to submit all the financial report that prove that the funding you received was used accordingly or as per the proposal that you submitted to the funder. So these are some of the key things and elements that we cannot run away from. And number 4, we'll be looking at the basic, just general strategic planning. As you all know that all successful organizations are not successful by chance. They are very much intentional about their success. They do strategy, some once a year, some twice in a year, some once in 2 years, but they are very much intentional. They plan, they set up goals, they know what they want, and they sort of map up the way. They know how they will get there, they know who will get there, they know the resources that are required to get there. So we'll look at just at a basic sort of a strategy to say, if I were to plan for my sports organization or my office or my sports club, how do I go about that? So I want you to join me as we begin on this great presentation. So let's look at some of the key things. So the first thing is the appointment of club leaders, or I'll say, somebody could say the executive committee, which I think one of the key things is to know that you need to appoint people. And the second key thing is to have an idea of the type of people that you can appoint to run for you or to run with you. So one of the key things is to make sure that the person who appoints is the right person, meaning the overall leader or the general manager or the chairperson of the club. You understand it that without proper leadership, a club or a sports organization cannot do well, meaning that the man or the woman up there must be somebody who's very sound, because if the person up there does not really understand what it takes to build a successful club, that club can never be built. There's something I've seen as I move around the country working with different clubs, is that sometimes if I'm the founder of the structure, I tend to think that I should be that person who does all the things. And I've seen that it's not always the case. Sometimes I can be the founder of the club, but I might need to hand over some specific duties to somebody who is more qualified than myself in that area, because the ability to delegate to somebody who's better than me in that area is also a sign of my strength as a leader. So sometimes I've seen that maybe club managers, club owners, sometimes they tend to feel that if they are not occupying a certain position in the club, they don't have enough power in the club. And I've seen that it's not always the case. So what I'm trying to say is that the person who's sitting up there, the person must understand that he needs to appoint the right people to run with him that organization or structure. And that takes us to point number 2, which is we need to set up very clear criteria in terms of the appointment of coaches, the appointment of administrators, the appointment of facility managers. We don't want to be in a situation whereby we just bring people because they are our friends back from school. That's not enough. So the criteria must be very much well defined and clear, so that when we bring people on board, we know that these are the best people that we need that will move the organization to the next level. So the next thing is to define the roles and responsibilities. And I'm aware that we've got a nice template or a document that has the list of the key office bearers or the key role players in a club structure and their roles. Of course, you are free to reshuffle this in any way that you wish you should reshuffle. It's just a guide to say, if you don't have a proper structure in your organization or in your club, you could perhaps look at this as a base and maybe build from it, and I'm sure it will help. And also the role players in a club or the key office bearers, one of the things that are very much necessary is training. And I'm sure you might have picked it up. If you have not, you will pick it up when you go through the section on education and training. Successful organizations, there's one thing that they are always doing. I've noticed that it's called the training of people, capacity building. They keep training the people, and training of people does not necessarily mean that the people are not clever enough. Sometimes, yes, they are clever, but there's always the next level. It's not really easy to reach the peak. Anybody can always do better than he's doing. So one of the key things is to always look at the people, look at the coach, look at the administrator, look at the conditioning coach, and say, guys, where can we improve? There's always something to learn that will make the structure to be more solid and to be more competent. So that the training in any organization must be something that is ongoing. Of course, like we did discuss in the section on education and training, that we have to deploy somebody who can work perhaps as a skills development facilitator, somebody who can identify the gaps and sort of come up with intervention to close all those gaps. So those are some of the key things that we look at leadership. And we're also looking at the proper and efficient running of club meetings, or let me say organizational meetings. And one of the key things that really sits on top there is that if you talk about club meetings, the key thing or the key position we have to fill in there is the appointment of the secretary or the appointment of the administrator, because that person becomes the engine of communication. Every document about meetings, it comes from his or her desk. So I'll say the first thing here that we need to pay attention into is the appointment of a secretary or a club administrator. Once again, when filling in these important positions, we really need to look at a number of qualities and be able to appoint people who have an ability to fill these positions. Like I said, sometimes the person might be a volunteer, but we have to ask ourselves a question: does this person have the ability to become our administrator? Does this person have basic organizational skills? Does this person have basic business writing skills? Can we write a letter? Can we sometimes ask him to write a report? Can he type minutes of the meeting? So those are some of the key things that we need to look at. Can he send emails to our important members? So we can't ignore these things. So these are the key people that we need to make sure that they are appointed and they've got the right skills. And of course, we have to always send them on training whenever we have an opportunity. And also, we need to define the various meetings that we may need to hold in our organizations and know what are those meetings. I'm sure if you go through your manual, you will notice that there are several meetings that are listed there. Some might apply to your situation, some might not apply, but let's see, pick what you can use and see how it goes for you. And we'll also look at documents that are required. You know, one of the things we've done in the past was to run an audit in most of our sport clubs in the country across several sporting codes. One of the things that were shocking is the fact that many sport organizations or clubs don't even have something called a meeting file. Meetings are taking place on weekly basis or monthly basis, but there's nothing like evidence. And that's why we came up with this and said, you know, maybe we need to assist by saying that if you want to run meetings, there are basic things that you must have into place. And one of those things is something like an agenda. If you want to run a meeting, there should be an agenda for the meeting. Whether the agenda is shared prior to the meeting or the agenda is not shared prior to the meeting. But if I am running a meeting, there must be some sort of an agenda, meaning something that will guide me so that the discussions don't deviate from what we need to discuss. And also, after that, we look into minutes. There are several templates that will make available for you to use to say whenever there's a meeting, there should be somebody. It could be your secretary, it could be your office admin person. That person must be taking minutes so that the minutes, if possible or if allowed by the manager, they can be circulated to everybody who should have them. And also we look at the meeting notice. How do we structure a meeting notice? How do we send it? And how do people respond to it? That's also very key. And many things that we can look at, such as the meeting rules. How do we behave in a meeting? The venue checklist. If we are setting up a meeting, what type of a venue should one look for? Stationary checklist. All those things are key because I'm sure some of you have run meetings. It's very easy to forget something very important. You know, we are sort of back to the basics to say that if we have not mastered the basics, we cannot run successful sport organizations. And I must say that it pains my heart when we move around and visit various sport organizations, because one thing that we see that is always lacking, it's basic things. What makes most clubs not successful is not because they lack major things. They lack basic things such as the ability to run proper meetings, the ability to keep documents. So these are some of the key things that we want to get right from the foundation before we can say we are going higher and higher. And also we're looking at something very key. That's the next thing I'm looking at, which is running of club finances. It is very much impossible to run a sports club or a sports organization or any organization for that matter without finances. And we have noticed, I'm sure you have also observed that sports organizations, usually we don't have money to do some of the programs we need to do. And I believe that many clubs or structures can sustain themselves financially if they would learn the ability to look for finances, and also learn the ability to manage the finances we receive in a way that it will give birth to more finances. And I have seen that these are some of the skills that can be very much lacking. And I want to look at this for the next few minutes, just to look at basic principles or key things that we need to run a successful finance department, if I would put it like that, or to say, how do we make sure that the finances in our sport organizations are managed in a way that, like I said, in a way that gives birth to more finances. Let me put it like that. Now, one of the key things is, for anybody to have funding, the organization must be registered. And I don't know how you register. I know that some clubs are registered as NPOs, but it's very key, especially if you want to apply for big funding, for maybe you want to improve your infrastructure. It is very important that our sports structures are registered. A few months ago, we had workshops in some provinces whereby we gathered clubs across sporting codes. One of the things we noticed was that a lot of clubs, of course at grassroots level, they were struggling to get money because there was a fundamental problem, which is most clubs are running and they are not registered to run as clubs, but they are running. So if you want to apply for funding, one of the key things that funders would require are your registration documents, such as your NPO certificate, if you are an NPO, or whatever certificate that you might have. So when we need to apply for funding, we need to have all the required documents. That's the next thing. Required documents, they vary from funder to funder. There are financial documents. Funders might want to see if you have a bank account, you've got your bank statements, you've got an accountant who does your books, you've got a budget, and all those things. They might want to see if you are tax compliant, whether you are exempted or paying tax. It's very important that your tax documents are always up to date. So these are some of the things that just disqualify clubs or sports organizations from applying for funding. And also, when you talk about funding, one of the key things is to have a person who is appointed or identified, because maybe when I say appointed, it means somebody who's paid. Let's say at a grassroots level, there should be somebody who is responsible for funding applications. And that person must understand how the funding framework goes. And that person must be aware of the funders or organizations that fund the work that we do. Because if you look at funders don't fund everything. They fund what they want to fund. So therefore, if you and I are in sports, there are organizations that would like, or that usually fund sport-specific projects, or it can be an event, it can be a tournament, it can be equipment, whatever it is that you need. There are specific funders for specific things. So whoever does these funding applications must be somebody who is willing to go around and get information and find out what is there and how do you go about it. And also, we need to identify something I call the categories of funders. If I'm in sports, I need to know that there are various categories of funders. I may need to get a sponsor. Let's say if I'm running a club, I can get a donor, I can get a grant. Sometimes I don't get money, but I might get equipment. Some organizations don't give out money. They can give you equipment rather than to give you money. So there's different things that would require you and I to go out there and see how best we can go about this. So like I said, to be successful at what we do, we don't need people who are casual at it. We need people who are very much dedicated to say, I'll do this and I will get it right. and I will go out for my club or my sports structure to look for these things until we are where we want to be. So that's finances. And if you look at finances, we have to understand something I call the various funding applications. It's a skill that not everybody can have. Putting together a proposal for a project or an event is not an easy thing. And we have to identify people who don't mind writing funding documents because it's a special skill that is required. It needs a lot of patience, and it needs somebody who doesn't mind reading documents or doesn't mind writing or typing. That's a special skill. So let's look at the various funding applications. We can get applications for sponsorships. Like I said previously, we can get applications for donors. We can get applications for grants. And I'm not sure if you have noticed that a lot of these funders, they've got something called windows, whereby they opened for a specific period and they close. So meaning there is a need to have somebody who's always on the lookout to check when are these organizations opening. For example, you might have 10 organizations that you can apply for funding from. You need to know exactly and have the calendar for the whole year to know that organization number 1, they open this time, they close at this time, so that you are always applying for something. So that is very key and that is very important. But like I said, there is no way we can get funding without proper documentation. The next thing on funding is money must be well managed. So funds that come through into the organizations must be very well managed. So one of the key things we did say earlier on is to appoint a financial administrator, or to have somebody who manages the finances, and it must be somebody who has the ability to do that job. And one of the key roles of that person is to keep each and every document that goes in or that goes out of the office. And these are some of the documents that are usually required. Documents such as your bank statements, your receipts, your invoice, your purchase orders, your payment proofs, your quotation, and there could be many more. So there must always be a file in your office whereby you keep all these documents, because usually when you apply for funding, they would require you to produce these documents just to see how legitimate you are, or they want to see your financial integrity by looking at your bank statement to see if you are able to spend your money in a way that you should spend it. Remember, like I said, good management of money gives birth to more money. So those are some of the things we can't run away from. And the next thing I want us to look at, which is very important, which is also an engine of every organization, is something I call the strategic planning. The strategic planning of the club, that's when you plan for the year, you plan for the quarter, you plan for the decade. I don't know how long you plan, but basically you have to sit and plan. And you and I, you understand it that without planning, the club is going nowhere. For any organization to meet the goals, it must set the goals. Because if there are no goals set, there is no target. And if there is no target, there's nothing to reach. There's no motivation. We are just working because we want to work. So the strategic planning, it can be something that is done annually. Like I said, it can be twice a year, or it can be once in 2 years, depending on your needs and how well you want to do it. And of course, when you do strategy, you have to invite people who can provide valuable inputs. And I've seen that some organizations would rather bring an external person to come and assist the organization, so that you make sure that whatever that you've put in there will be some practical steps to sort of achieve it. One of the key things in the strategy is that there must be some action plan that is attached to it, because we have planned and planned and planned many things. At the end of the day, nobody takes action, and it's just planning and planning and planning. That's why some people don't like to attend meetings, because they say, what's the point of sitting in meetings and there's no action plan? So action plan is very important. That's when now you begin to distribute the task or the activities to the various individuals, so that at the end of the day there is action and all the objectives are met. And the strategy can always be published amongst the key members or office bearers. And let's look at the key sections of the strategic planning. Strategic planning, there are various templates that you can find, which will also provide a few if you need them. Strategic planning should have basic things such as the vision and the mission of the organization, both short and long-term goals. And we also look at something called the SWOT analysis, which is your strength, your weakness, your opportunities, as well as your threats. And usually the last phase of the strategy will be the action plan. Like I said, action plan, what we need is, what is it that we need to achieve? By when must we achieve? Who must achieve it? And what resources does the person need? And also we always look at the time frames by when, because we need to set targets, and the time frames must be very clear so that everybody knows in terms of what he needs to do. And we thought we would provide some templates that you may want to use. And we'll provide a lot of templates based on request. You've got the email address that we have provided, and you've got the WhatsApp number. You can request any template that you wish you have. And I just want to share with you some of the templates that we have, so that if possible, and if you need them, you can just send us a mail and we'll be very happy to email them to you. For example, when it comes to club leadership, we've got templates such as the appointment criteria for club members, the club structure and roles. For example, if your organization does not have an organogram, we can send you a template so that you can just type in the names and those office bearers in there. We've got a number of templates for codes of conducts for coaches, for administrators, for referees, and so on and so forth. And we've got policies templates. You can change, put your logo, and start using it. We've got various contracts that you can use, contracts for coaches, administrators, job descriptions, and all those. We've got quite a number of policies and procedures that can be used by sports organizations. And all these tools and templates, we've put them together for you. Like I said, they are available on request. If you would like to request them, you can send a mail to us and we'll send you whatever templates that you need. And we've got templates for club meetings or organizational meetings. We've got all these templates. We've got meeting venue checklist. We've got meeting stationery templates, food menu templates, agenda, minutes, meeting notice, meeting rules. All these templates can be available in Word if you need them. And we've got some financial templates for your fundraising and things. If you need a template for an invoice, a template quotation, statement, petty cash slip or voucher, business plan, sponsorship proposal, donation form, grant applications. Of course, this can change because organizations, sometimes they tell you which form to complete when you apply for funding. And we've got a strategic planning template. We've got an action plan template. So there's quite a number of things that we would like to make available so that we can improve the way we do things. Like I always say to the sports people that I work with, that we need to commercialize sports. We need to formalize it. And we don't want our industry to be known as an industry for volunteers. We want to use sport as a vehicle that will contribute towards our GDP. And the only way we can do that, that's when we begin to structure our industry and put systems in place. And if we don't do that as sports people, nobody will. So I want us to work together and build this industry for the better of everybody. And this is unfortunately the end of my presentation. I hope you have enjoyed it. And thank you so much for watching. And I'm sure I'll see you later. Thank you. Bye.